No mercy. A court in Egypt upholds a death sentence against the deposed President Mohamed Morsi. What could the repercussions of killing Egypt's first freely elected leader be? And how will it be perceived on an international stage? This is Inside Story. Good to have you along. Warm welcome to the programme from me, David Foster. Mohamed Morsi was sworn in as Egypt's first elected civilian president in June of 2012. A leading member of the Muslim Brotherhood, he promised a government working for all Egyptians and a change from the days of Hosni Mubarak. Fast forward, though, and Morsi, with 5 other defendants, has now been sentenced to death by hanging on charges relating to a mass jailbreak during the 2011 revolution. So how will the sentencing be received within Egypt and around the world? And will it do more than make Morsi a martyr? Well, before we bring in our guests to talk about this, let's take a look at how Mohamed Morsi went from leading Egypt to sitting on death row. Rob Matheson has more.
Mohamed Morsi was sworn in as Egypt's first elected civilian leader and 5th president in June 2012. A leading member of the Muslim Brotherhood, Morsi won because of backing from his supporters and voters who didn't want another president like Hosni Mubarak. Morsi promised a government working for all Egyptians. He tried to ease the fears of women and minorities. But politically and economically, the following 12 months were tough. Morsi's opponents accused him of being a puppet of the Muslim Brotherhood, failing as an international statesman and allowing social problems to become crises. All that sparked the protests that led to his removal by the military. In the days leading up to Morsi being ousted, millions of opponents and supporters lined the streets of Cairo. Morsi supporters said his rule was legitimate because he'd been voted into office. The opposition response, Morsi's time was a total failure and polarized Egyptians. Some estimates say there were more than 9,000 protests nationwide in the 12 months after Morsi's election. Hopes that the economy would improve were dashed. Inflation soared, food prices skyrocketed, and fuel shortages became part of everyday life. Sectarian tension rose to the surface. Morsi was praised for reigning in the military, but criticized for throwing out rules imposed by the Supreme Council of the Armed Forces, which restricted his powers. He decided to give himself authority to overrule the judiciary. It was supposed to be temporary, but judges went on strike until Morsi was forced to tear up the decree. In a speech almost a year after his election win, Morsi conceded he had made mistakes, but for many Egyptians it was already too late. On June 30th, 2013, millions rallied across Egypt calling for his resignation. Days later, the man Morsi appointed as defense minister, Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, led a coup that removed him from power. Sisi was now running the country. The interim authority launched a crackdown on Morsi's supporters. More than 1,400 people were killed. Morsi and many of his followers began a long wait in jail.
Well, let's bring in our guests for this Inside Story in Istanbul. Ashraf Abdelghaffar, a senior Muslim Brotherhood official. In London, Wafiq Mustafa, founder and chairman of the British Arab Network. Also in Istanbul, Marwa Maziad, a specialist in Middle East politics. Mr. Ghaffar, can I come to you as a representative of the Muslim Brotherhood first on this one? Your group has put out a statement saying there should be mass protests in Egypt. What do you expect to see? What do you hope to achieve?
Of course, people will be very angry from what is going on because this is not a kind of judgment. It's not a court, it's not a prosecution, but it's a kind of political game in order to finalize the revolution of 25th of January 2011 and to finalize or to kill all the samples and the big people who was sharing in this revolution. And then there is a president, around 13 million has been elected him, and he is going to kill 13 million votes For what? For nothing. Is there is any criminal reason? There is no criminal reason. Did he escape from the jail? No. He called Al Jazeera once he was released from the prison. He called Al Jazeera and he said, me and all my Muslim brother group who has been arrested 2 days ago, now we are released and we don't know where shall we go. Should we go to police station to give ourselves to them again, or what shall we do? I think it's very clear. It's a political judgment, a political court, but people is not accepting this decision under any condition, and they will not accept also.
I was going to ask you whether you felt that, as you clearly do, that this was not tried on the merits of the case, but is a political judgment. You've already answered that, so let me ask you about something you've just referred to, which is you think this is designed to put a final end to the days of the revolution. Has that already happened? Are there people out on the streets willing still to protest, knowing the costs, or has the revolution died?
No. What I am saying, during revolution, as you remember, if I understand you, Morsi has been jailed before the Friday of anger, which is 28th of January, and after that, some people has been broken the doors of all the prisons all over the country, Al-Marg and Limantora and everywhere, and then they are released. So revolution will continue. 2011 will continue regardless. Morsi will continue or not in very normal way. Morsi maybe die tomorrow or after tomorrow. But when you take a decision to kill the symbol of the revolution, this means that you are killing revolution and killing the thousands or millions of people who's coming to be with the revolution.
Marwa Maziad in Istanbul. Our previous speakers talking about the fact that Morsi perhaps could be executed tomorrow. That is not going to be the case, is it? In terms of the judicial process, there will be appeals. This could go on for years. I'll ask you about that, what's going to happen next now, and then perhaps what kind of leverage having him in jail could be used for by the Sisi establishment.
First of all, the Muslim Brotherhood, it's amazing to hear that Morsi is the symbol of the revolution. We know that Morsi and the Muslim Brotherhood were not the symbol of the January 2011 revolution. They were the most organized group, a minority group that seemed to be able to transition perhaps by presenting themselves as viable political players. Well, they proved not to be so, and they alienated most of the country after winning barely 51%. In a very polarized election. So the question that we are addressing now is whether Morsi is going to be hung. It's unfortunate, actually, that majority of Egyptians who believe in the death capital, it's legal, it's part of the legal culture of Egypt, would like to see the Muslim Brotherhood eradicated in that respect. But I don't think this will happen, and I think this would be a bad step, because there shouldn't be creation of a martyr culture around Morsi. Just the same way Said Qutb and even Menderes in Turkey had created these victimization narratives and martyr culture that come back to haunt us in history. What will happen, and I expect that will be considered, is that it's going to be a long process of almost truth-finding and truth and reconciliation eventually. So I need to reframe the way we're looking at the Muslim Brotherhood. The Muslim Brotherhood is a minority group in Egypt that managed to organize itself and reach power. And half the country, half the half, so their constituents are 20% really, and that's a minority group, but should be there. But another 20 or 30% gave them their votes, hoping that they can lead the way post-revolution.
OK, I'm going to move this on just a second to Mr. Mustafa, who's in London. Yes, the point is that he made an alliance. He made a deal with a lot of different people, didn't he? Liberals, moderates, different groups who thought that perhaps he was the best option available to them. Then he did nothing for those people and they deserted him. So where did it start to go wrong for Mohamed Morsi, do you think?
Well, what's happened now, what's concerned everybody is the death sentence. Reaffirming the death sentence by the judges and by the Grand Mufti of Egypt is a big worry for us all. It is a travesty of justice. I'm a liberal person, and I feel what's happened today is a very, very sad day for Egypt and for the free world. It reminds me with General Haq of Pakistan hanging Bhutto in 1970s. I think this is going to create a lot of problems for Egypt, for stability, and I can't see way out of it without freeing all these prisoners and stopping these mass trials.
You say you are a liberal. I mentioned liberals when I was introducing you, that a lot of them feel that Morsi didn't carry through the agenda that they wanted him to do. Is that something that you recognise?
No, not really. I don't think Morsi may have been in position as a president, but actually he did not have the reign of powers in his hand. As we could see later, the military was playing strings around him all the time, and that's how he was easily deposed, and there was a lot of agitation in the street, which was unfortunate. But the fact of the matter is that Egypt have had a revolution that removed the Mubarak, but not willing to accept Mubarak Mark II. Egypt need democracy, need a parliament, need a proper judiciary, need rule of law, and need people to get jobs and employment and confidence from the outside world, to have tourism. How can we have a country to move forward if we're having courts which hanging people and having, what is worrying even more is having the Grand Mufti be dragged into this political judiciary, and this sentence that will cause breakdown.
This is probably a good time to bring in this item here, because earlier this month Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, the current president, said this about Morsi's election. This was while Sisi himself was on a trip to Germany. Pretty short statement, pretty clear what he's saying.
Correct. The former president, Mohamed Morsi, took 51% of the vote in democratic, free elections.
Mr. Ghaffar in Istanbul, as a member of the Muslim Brotherhood, it has been said that Morsi himself had no power, that he was actually run by the management board of the Muslim Brotherhood, Maktab Irshad, and that they wouldn't let him do the things that perhaps he wanted. What do you say to that?
Maybe we are speaking something, a side issue out of this story. Now there is a president has been elected and he is a legitimate president, and this president...
Yeah, I've heard this, and we've all heard this 100 times. What I'm trying to get at is whether Morsi, in fact, was a victim of a power struggle within the Muslim Brotherhood, and that he may well have wanted to do some of the things that he promised during his election campaign, and he wasn't allowed to do so by this management board, the more powerful people in the Muslim Brotherhood.
No. What is the relation of Muslim Brotherhood with the president? Maybe, of course, there is a kind of advice, but no more than advice. But he is the president, but he is a president without power, without presidency. When you find that the police is not allowing or obeying him, the Minister of Interior, Minister of Defense is not allowing him, not defending him even during Ittihadiyya. They are not giving him, the intelligence doesn't give him the right information. Who is that president who cannot get right information from the power or from the state? He cannot get right help from the Ministry of Interior or Ministry of Defense or from the judgment. So they try to let him alone without any power in order not to succeed in his period of presidency. But if, in spite of that, can we compare now 1 year passed on Abdel Fattah al-Sisi election and 1 year passed, or 1 year only for Morsi? What about the economics? without any help from Saudi Arabia or Gulf area? What about the security of the people in the streets? What about the people who is not employed? What about everything? What about the protesters every day? What about even the freedom? Freedom, now you have more than 40,000 persons, regardless they are like Morsi or they are from Morsi group or not. There is more than 40,000 jailed for 1 year for nothing, and they are punished in something which is illegal internationally.
We did the other day.
How many persons
Mr.
killed?
Ghaffar, we did the other day a story about 1 year after Sisi had taken power. We did an edition of Inside Story, and we looked into that. So please excuse me if I want to move the discussion on and go back to Marwa Maziad there. You've been nodding, you've been shaking your head, so obviously you have some thoughts about what has... We'll come back to you, sir. We will come back to you. Marwa Maziad, what do you think? Was Morsi a victim of his own naivety?
Let me go back to your guests. I just came back from Egypt, and maybe your guests are removed from the reality on the ground. I think actually that the sentiment among the majority of Egyptians that are capitalizing on, as I said, the law says that treason charges would be to hang the traitor. So there is a sentiment actually that they would like to see Morsi hung tomorrow. There are no protests from the majority of Egyptians in support of Morsi. However, I think that strategically, that should not be the case in order not to create the victimization and the martyrdom that will come back.
You have made this point already. I hate to butt in, but it's a shortish programme. So let me move on to Mr. Mustafa in London, because I want to get on. You were disagreeing with that. There may be one or two, maybe hundreds, maybe thousands of people who would like to see Morsi face the death penalty. But outside the country, there has been a lot of objection to this. People have said that you should not be doing this, perhaps simply from a point of view of repugnance rather than looking at Egypt's internal politics. But is this going to affect Egypt's position with the outside world?
Certainly it will, and that was clear during the visit of Sisi to Germany. Many senior political figures in Germany expressed their views very clearly to Sisi that they do not agree and they condemn death penalty of Morsi and others, because it's clearly judicial process in Egypt is inconsistent. I mean, and having Islamic authorities like the Grand Mufti to reaffirm it, can someone imagine the Archbishop of Canterbury, for example, getting himself involved in sentencing in the British courts? I think it is bizarre. I think it is travesty of justice. I think it's really unacceptable.
I sort of get that, but I mean, that's the way the law works in Egypt, and it doesn't work that way in the United Kingdom. So we'll be back with you in just a moment, Marwa, if you don't mind. I would like to press home the point with Wafiq Mustafa here, that although there have been a lot of statements outside, do you think it's going to affect Egypt's growth in relations with other countries, either neighbouring countries or those further afield?
I think it will lead to isolation of the regime, and I think he'll have more difficulties, as we have seen what happened in African Union. And I could imagine the Muslim Brotherhood are very astute. They have got a huge machineries abroad, legal machineries. They can cause a lot of problems for Sisi and regime members. So I think it's not going to be a rosy future for the regime, and will be in real trouble.
Okay, Marwa, you've been eager to get in. I don't know which particular point you want to refer to, but I'll give you free rein this time.
Okay, great. First of all, let me go back to this idea of legal culture. It's on the books that would happen. It's in the US and it's other countries. Europe is against capital punishment. I'm per se against it. But what I'm saying is that this is the legal application of this law. Would it benefit? Do I think Morsi will be hung? I don't think so. I don't think so, and I hope not so. I think it will be a perpetuation of these trial and taking appeal. It's a very slow process. And by the way, bringing the Mufti in, it's a procedural thing within the Egyptian law. So if we're discussing the law of capital punishment in Egypt, that would be the issue to discuss and reform. But it's all procedural. What I'm emphasizing is your question that I didn't get to answer. Have Morsi been the victim of his own brotherhood? I have actually written about that academically and otherwise in my column. Yes, the Muslim Brotherhood failed to transform itself from an exclusive group of a minority group into the viable political party that it could have become. And the presence of the Murshid, the supreme guide, on top of Morsi was elected, created these binary positions between the two that the regular citizen did not understand. In fact, the approximation became that it's another version of Iran with the mullah, with the supreme council.
If I may butt in, could it still become a political force, or is that it?
I think if it renews itself and if it actually had learned from Erbakan, the 1997 moment when the military also intervened to tell him you're doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things, you'd better change. And what was his response at the time? I'm a patriot, I'm not going to represent the country to this kind of polarization.
Okay, Mr. Ghaffar, as a member of the Muslim Brotherhood, somebody speaking on its behalf tonight, we hear the view that the Muslim Brotherhood should renew itself, that it can renew itself, it could be a force in politics, but presumably you believe that what the Egyptian judiciary and the politicians there have done is try to put an end to it as a force. How do you go about changing that?
Of course, anyone has a trial. He has to think about what about his positive things and what about his negative things and what about his success and what about his fails. It's not a problem, and we cannot say no, we are completely right 100% or 90% or something like that. This is the first time to let Muslim Brotherhood to have a party, even a party. This is the first time to have a party. This is the first time to share in a democratic kind of election. This is the first time to work. And Dr. Morsi wasn't a politician from the beginning. He was a professor of engineering. But we decide to have a chance to have a trial.
But it didn't work. It didn't work for whatever reason. The Muslim Brotherhood's now banned in Egypt. Can it come back? What do you do to change things, the perceptions? It's going to take years.
Let me to tell you, Muslim Brotherhood has been banned since Nasser regime, but it's working and increasing. And now, in spite of your guest saying we are very minority, yes, and the Christian are minority as well. But we are the biggest minority in the political aspect. If you look for Al-Wafd party, if you look for the other party, it's a cartonic parties, which decoration, just decoration, but we are the only organized party. But we didn't get the chance more than 1 year. But for Muslim Brotherhood, they will continue, they will increase, they will be like before. Every street, every house, every village, every city, you will find a Muslim Brotherhood. And let me to tell you, after all this kind of massacre, killing people and raping girls and prisonizing people, thousands of people, tens of thousands, and all these things, everybody on this panel knows, but we are still continue, and we are still present in the country, and we will stay in our country and work on this thing. And
okay, everybody on the panel wants to say something.
Our idea.
I'm afraid I'm going to have to say that's it. However much we'd all like to carry on this conversation, I have no doubt, though, that it will happen again. This is far from over. So thank you very much indeed to my guests in Istanbul, Ashraf Abdel Ghaffar, Marwa Maziad.
Thank you.
And in London, Wafiq Mustafa. Thank you too. Thank you very much indeed for watching. As always, we'd like to hear your thoughts. You can reach us on our programme page, aljazeera.com, and you can post your comments at facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can tweet us too at AJ Inside Story. We do read them. From me, David Foster, and the rest of the team, goodbye for now. See you next time.